The Emperor's Last Sorcerer Part 1. Chapter 1. The Burning of the Seer. The sky above Rome bled red. From the upper tiers of the Colosseum, the crowd was quiet, not from reverence, but from unease. They had seen beasts and blood before, but today, the arena was silent save for the crackle of torches and the low, unrelenting chant of the Red Legion priests. At the center of the sand stood a man in chains, barefoot, robes torn and marked with ash. His hair was matted with blood, and strange ink covered his arms in curling, ancient runes. Some whispered he was a demon. Others said he was a prophet. But everyone knew what he was called. The Emperor's Last Sorcerer. Cassius stood at the edge of the lower tribunal gate, ink-stained scroll in hand, sweating beneath his scholar's robe. He had been sent to observe, to record, to ensure the sorcerer's final words would be remembered by the imperial archives, then erased forever. He hadn't expected the sorcerer to look calm. The man lifted his head, eyes dark as obsidian, and scanned the crowd with a stillness that made the air feel too thin. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, but it carried like thunder. "He is not dead," whispers rippled through the crowd. The high priest flinched. Even Cassius felt his grip tighten on the stylus. "You crowned him with gold," the sorcerer said, gaze turned upward. "But you could not kill what was never born of man. When the red moon rises again, he will return." The priests moved quickly now, forming a circle around the chained man, chanting louder, faster. A rune-burned brand was pressed to his chest. The crowd gasped as his skin sizzled, but the sorcerer didn't scream. He smiled. Flames erupted from the brand, not orange, but violet and white. They didn't consume him. They erased him. One moment he stood defiant. The next he was gone, leaving behind only a ring of scorched symbols etched in the sand and a faint scent of myrrh and sulfur. Cassius felt something stir in his chest, a tightness that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with memory. He'd never seen that symbol before. And yet, he knew it. Chapter 2. The Emperor's Secret. The ink on Cassius's scroll had not yet dried when the summons arrived. 2 soldiers in crimson cloaks appeared at the door of his study before dawn, silent, helmeted, and without explanation. They flanked him without a word, guiding him through the half-sleeping streets of Rome, past crumbling temples and shuttered taverns, toward the Palatine Hill. He was brought not to the palace, but to the villa of Senator Varian Marcellus, a man who, by all accounts, had not been seen in public in over a year. Whispers said the senator had taken ill with some divine punishment. Others claimed he had gone mad after staring into the eyes of a seer who'd foretold his death. Cassius had believed none of it. Until now. The villa was dying. The once golden mosaics had faded to shadow, and the fountains ran dry. Dust clung to every statue, as if the gods themselves had turned their faces away. A single servant led him down a corridor that reeked of old incense and decay. At the end of it was a room lit by nothing but a single oil lamp. Senator Marcellus lay on a stone recliner, covered in thick furs despite the heat. His skin was ashen, parchment thin, and stretched tight over bone. But his eyes were sharp, too sharp, and they fixed on Cassius like a hawk. "Sit," he rasped. Cassius obeyed. The senator coughed once, a horrible, rattling sound, and motioned toward the table. On it sat a scroll wrapped in deep blue velvet, sealed with red wax bearing the mark of the imperial phoenix. Not the current emperor's sigil. It was the mark of Valerian the Mad, the emperor who had died nearly 40 years before. Or so the empire claimed. "You're a historian," the senator said. "So tell me, Cassius, how many emperors have ruled in your lifetime?" Cassius blinked. 3, he said cautiously. "Galerius, Diocletian, and now Constantine. Soon to be just one, they say." Marcellus smiled without humor. "Then history already lies to you." He pushed the scroll forward with a trembling hand. That contains the true death decree of the last sorcerer. Not the one the people saw in the arena. Not the one you wrote down. Cassius hesitated. Why would I be given this? Because the Emperor is dead. And yet he lives. Cassius felt his blood chill. The senator leaned closer, shadows flickering across his ruined face. He knew it couldn't be destroyed. The thing they buried beneath the city. The sorcerer wasn't the threat, he was the key. And now that he's gone, the lock will begin to crack. You want me to stop it? Cassius asked, his voice thin. No, the senator whispered. I want you to find the truth and record it. So that when fire consumes this city again, someone remembers why. He coughed violently, blood flecking his lips. Take the scroll. Leave now. They will come for me before sunset. Cassius reached for the scroll, hands trembling. As he lifted it, he noticed something strange beneath the table, a circle etched into the wood, faint and ancient, pulsing with a soft glow. A sigil. The same shape the last sorcerer had burned into the sand. Marcellus saw him looking. We all carry marks, Cassius, he said with a rueful smile. Some are written in ink. Others are carved into the soul. Before Cassius could speak, the doors burst open. The Red Legion had arrived. Chapter 3: Ashes in the Archive. Cassius ran through the winding alleys of Rome, the imperial scroll clutched to his chest like a stolen relic. Behind him, the Red Legion spread through the villa like fire through parchment. He hadn't waited to see what they would do to Senator Marcellus. He already knew. The moment their boots struck marble, the fate of anyone who knew the truth had been sealed. He didn't stop until he reached the Archivum Secretum, the forbidden vault beneath the library of Tiberius. No scholars roamed there. No students whispered translations in candlelight. Only scribes with sealed tongues, and scrolls that had outlived empires. The air inside was cold and metallic. Columns rose like pillars of judgment, and torchlight danced across gold-bound tomes sealed with wax and bone. Cassius descended the marble stairs, heart pounding. The hidden scroll burned in his satchel, as though it didn't belong in this world. And perhaps it didn't. The archivist looked up as Cassius entered, a withered man whose eyes had long since faded to clouded white. You return early, he murmured. Cassius bowed. I need access to the Codices Obscura. Immediately. The archivist's head tilted. That section has not been requested in a generation. Then it's overdue, Cassius said grimly. The Codices Obscura were kept in the farthest chamber, sealed by a mechanism no one had dared open without written imperial permission. Cassius placed the scroll from Senator Marcellus on the stone pedestal. The imperial seal pulsed once with red light, then cracked down the center. The stone gate hissed open. Behind it, the chamber bloomed with dust, mold, and silence. Scrolls wrapped in black silk. Tablets inscribed in tongues older than Latin. And on the wall, half erased by time, a mural. A crowned man standing over a broken city, a glowing key in one hand, and a veiled corpse in the other. Cassius's breath caught. The red moon was painted above it, its eye bleeding across the stars. This was no myth. This was a memory. He unwrapped the velvet scroll. The contents were not what he expected. It was a confession, written in the emperor's hand. Not Constantine. Not Diocletian. But Valerian, dead 40 years, or so the empire claimed. This is the price of power, the script began, shaky and raw. To live in shadow while Rome forgets me. The scroll described a pact made in desperation. Rome was crumbling under plague and rebellion, and Valerian had turned to the Forbidden Order, the Severan Circle, sorcerers descended from the Etruscan bloodlines, exiled for practicing soul-binding, memory manipulation, and the crafting of living spells. In exchange for power, he gave them something never named, only referred to as The one bound in silence, whose name was never born. Cassius's blood ran cold. One passage had been scrawled in larger, messier script. If the last key dies, the gate will remember, and he will return. Before he could process the full weight of it, the room flickered, dim torches sputtering as shadows moved where none should have. From the hallway came the sound of footsteps. He turned. The archivist lay in the doorway, eyes wide, mouth open, neck bent at a sharp and unnatural angle. And behind him, a figure stepped from the shadows. Cloaked in crimson, hood low, face hidden, save for the glint of a polished bronze mask. A voice echoed, low and emotionless. "That scroll is not yours to read." Cassius backed away slowly, scroll in hand. "I am a historian," he said carefully. "I serve the truth. You serve silence," the masked figure replied. "And silence does not bleed." The Red Legion assassin moved, quick as a blade in moonlight. Cassius bolted, scroll gripped tight, knocking over stacks of parchment and broken relics as he ran. He ducked through a side passage lined with crumbling busts, one of which shattered behind him as a throwing dagger struck the wall. He reached the surface gasping, lungs full of ash and old air. The city lights flickered in the distance. Bells rang from the northern tower. He looked down. The scroll pulsed softly in his hands. The wax seal had reformed, only now it bore a new sigil. Not the phoenix, but a single eye, wreathed in thorns. Chapter 4: The Map of Fire. The rain in the Sabura district fell like ash. Cassius ducked into the alleyway, hood drawn low. The scroll pulsed faintly under his cloak, its warmth now rhythmic, as if reacting to something. Or someone. By now, the Red Legion had his name, his face, his scent. It would be a matter of time before they tracked him. The assassin in the archive had left no question. The truth was forbidden, and history was a battlefield. But Cassius had learned something the Empire didn't expect. The last sorcerer wasn't the end of the story. He was a warning. And Cassius had no intention of being silenced. He entered the old taverna through a crooked back door, as instructed by a coded message he barely understood. Its ink had shimmered in lamplight, revealing words only after he'd traced the scroll's sigil with his finger. A single oil lamp lit the room. Tables overturned. Walls scorched with burn marks. And at the center, as if she had always been there, stood Aelia. Gone was the veiled servant from the trial. She now wore a long cloak embroidered with sunken symbols, her eyes glowing faintly beneath her hood, like the last flicker of a dying star. "You brought it," she said, voice low. Cassius nodded slowly and held up the scroll. "Why does it glow?" he asked. "Because it was never meant to be written," she replied. "Only remembered." She stepped forward, removed a dagger from her belt, and without hesitation, cut her palm. The blood hissed as it touched the scroll's seal. The wax didn't melt, it screamed. With a shuddering pulse, the scroll burst open. Not with words, but with flame. Shapes burned into the air, a constellation of moving, glowing lines that hovered like ghost fire above the table. A map, formed from flame and blood, rotating slowly in the smoky air. Cassius took a step back, stunned. "What is it?" "A key," Aelia whispered. "Not to a door. To a tomb." The map displayed landmarks that shouldn't exist. Roman roads twisted through mountains lost to time. Temples without names. And at the center, deep beneath the surface of Rome, a circle marked with the same thorn-wreathed eye. "This isn't a myth," Cassius breathed. "This is real." Aelia's expression darkened. "More real than the empire you serve." She extended a finger and touched the glowing center of the map. At once, flames flared outward in branching lines, like veins in a living body, forming 7 more symbols. Each was pulsing softly. "What are those?" Cassius asked. Seals, she said. Created by the Severan Circle. Each one a lock on what lies beneath the tomb. Cassius stepped closer, staring into the fire. The one who was never named. He wasn't buried, Aelia said. He was bound. Buried by the Emperor's own fear. And when the last sorcerer died, the first lock cracked. She turned to him now, face fierce, eyes alight. And if the second breaks, the city will burn. Again. Suddenly, the flame map flared brighter, and then flickered. Aelia cursed under her breath and waved her hand, extinguishing the spell. Cassius turned toward the doorway. Something had shifted in the air. The oil lamp sputtered. Footsteps. Heavy. Measured. Drawing near. Aelia grabbed Cassius's arm. They've found us. How? The scroll wasn't the only thing that remembered your blood. The door exploded inward. 2 red legionnaires stood silhouetted by torchlight, swords drawn, armor glinting with engraved incantations. Between them stood a figure in ceremonial crimson robes, face hidden behind a brass war mask in the shape of a sun. He raised one hand, and the scroll snapped shut in Cassius's grip, sealing itself in midair with a hiss of smoke. The boy has seen too much, the masked figure said. Then he should see what truth costs, Aelia replied, her voice suddenly sharp and old. Her hand rose, and the flame returned. But not from the scroll. From her. The air ignited. Flames danced across her arms in perfect lines of language, Etruscan, Latin, something older. The Red Legion advanced, but Aelia moved faster, fire curling like serpents, searing through the air as she shielded Cassius and drove the magic into the attackers. Swords shattered. The walls cracked. One legionnaire screamed as fire turned his blade to ash. Cassius stumbled back, shielding his face. When the fire faded, only smoke remained. The soldiers were gone. The masked figure had vanished. And Aelia was on her knees, breathing hard, her robes burned and her arms smoking. You're one of them, Cassius said, stunned. No, she said, rising slowly. I'm the one they couldn't bind. She looked at him, a grim fire behind her eyes. And I need you to help me stop what they buried. Cassius looked down at the sealed scroll. For the first time, it was no longer warm. It was cold. As if something behind it had awakened. Chapter 5: The Temple Beneath the Forum. The Roman Forum at night was a graveyard of whispers. Marble columns rose like ghostly ribs against the moonlight, casting long shadows across the ruined stones. Statues of long-forgotten emperors stared blankly across the broken square, their faces pitted by time and vengeance. Cassius followed Aelia through the crumbled remains of Saturn's temple, past vines and cracked archways that no longer bore names. He had grown up among these ruins, running errands, copying records, watching the light shift across stone. But tonight, everything felt different. Tonight, the ruins breathed. Aelia moved with silent precision, her cloak brushing along fallen altars and worn carvings as if she knew every crack in the forum by heart. Cassius kept close, clutching the sealed scroll and the tiny bronze dagger she'd pressed into his hand hours ago. What is this place really? He whispered. Aelia paused at the edge of a collapsed well. This was the first forum, she said. Before the Senate. Before the Empire. Before Rome had gods with temples and priests in gold. Here they worshipped the old powers, beneath the earth. She knelt and ran her fingers over the edge of a flat stone embedded in the soil. As she traced it, a faint shimmer rippled across its surface, like light on disturbed water. Cassius stepped forward, eyes widening. That's not Roman. No, Aelia said softly. It's pre-Roman. Etruscan. Maybe older. You mean mythic. In Rome, there's no difference. She pressed her bleeding palm to the stone. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the ground shuddered. Stone grinded against stone. The earth groaned beneath their feet. And slowly, with a hiss like a serpent's breath, the slabs slid away to reveal a staircase spiraling downward into total blackness. Cassius swallowed. "Why is it always down?" Aelia handed him a torch. "Because everything we fear is buried." The descent was long. The walls were narrow, damp with age, and carved with symbols Cassius didn't recognize. Some were half erased, some scratched over in fresh marks, words of warning, seals of banishment, names in a tongue that seemed to shift as he read them. "These symbols," he murmured. "They're alive." "They're memory," Aelia replied. "And memory never dies." At the bottom of the stair, the passage opened into a vast, circular chamber, vaulted stone lit only by the trembling glow of Cassius's torch. The floor was covered in bones. Not arranged, not buried. Scattered. Crushed. Some clawing toward the staircase. Others fused into the floor by blackened, melted stone. "This was the first attempt," Aelia said, her voice echoing. "The last time someone tried to break the seal." Cassius crouched near one of the skeletons, its jaw frozen in a scream, its hand fused to the stone floor like wax. He stood up quickly. "What killed them?" Aelia looked at the center of the chamber. "Not what. Who?" There, in the center, was the first seal. A stone altar carved in the shape of an eye, its pupil inset with a disk of black crystal that shimmered with threads of red. It pulsed softly, as if waiting. Cassius stepped forward. "This is it." He reached for the scroll, but Aelia held out her hand. "No ink." "Not this time." "Blood, memory, and fire." She stepped toward the altar, removed her cloak, and knelt. "Cassius," she said without turning, "if anything comes out of that seal, do not speak to it. Do not answer its questions. And whatever happens, do not give it your name." Cassius nodded slowly. Then Aelia placed both palms on the altar. The crystal flared to life, blazing with molten light. Symbols erupted across the floor like veins of fire. The bones shivered. A howl echoed through the chamber. It came not from above, but from within the stone itself. Cassius stepped back as the air turned thick, as though he were underwater. His torch flickered, dimmed. The light was no longer enough. The altar cracked down the center. From the darkness inside, a hand emerged. A human hand. Blackened. Gaunt. Covered in runes that glowed with burning light. It dragged itself upward, pulling the rest of a figure with it, a tall, robed being whose face was hidden by a golden mask in the shape of a wolf's skull. Around its neck, 7 keys hung on chains of bone. It stood in silence, watching them. And then it spoke. But not aloud. "Name." The voice echoed inside Cassius's skull, ancient, rasping, impossibly vast. Aelia stood. "We are not here to give names. Only warnings." The figure tilted its head. "You wear fire. But your flame is broken." It turned toward Cassius. "And you carry the truth." Unwritten. Cassius stepped back. The scroll throbbed in his cloak. The figure raised a finger. The altar split fully open. Inside was not gold, or relics, or books. It was a heart, still beating, still glowing, suspended in glass. Aelia gasped. "They seal the soul." The masked guardian lowered its hand. "The seal is remembered. But the gate grows hungry. Feed it, or it will feed itself." Then it stepped backward, into the flames, and vanished. The altar closed. The chamber went still. Cassius fell to his knees, breathing hard. Aelia remained frozen, staring at the altar. "That was not a guardian," she said quietly. "That was a reminder." Cassius looked up. Of what? Of what happens when memory becomes hungry? Chapter 6. The Red Legion Hunts. The seal had been awakened. The whispers of flame still clung to Cassius's ears as he and Aelia emerged from the tunnel beneath the forum, faces slick with sweat, lungs tight from the smoke of memory and the scent of scorched bone. It was nearly dawn. But Rome did not feel like it was waking. It felt like it was waiting. The streets were too quiet. Vendors kept their stalls shuttered, priests hurried their prayers. The usual beggars that haunted the forum were gone. Even the crows were silent. Cassius and Aelia moved like shadows through the alleys of the Aventine Hill, avoiding the main roads, ducking beneath arches where old Roman gods still sat cracked and forgotten. "Where are we going?" Cassius asked. "South. To the necropolis," Aelia said. "We need to find the next seal before they do." "Who are they exactly?" Cassius pressed. Aelia slowed. "The Red Legion were once guardians of the Empire's truth, bound to protect the Severian secrets. But after the Emperor turned against the Circle, they became something else. Enforcers. Worse. Hunters. They don't just destroy knowledge. They erase it from memory." A sound stopped them both. The sharp, unmistakable clink of armored boots. They turned the corner and froze. A Red Legion patrol was already there. 6 soldiers. Shields engraved with burning eyes. Spears tipped with glowing runes. Behind them stood a man in a silver mask shaped like a vulture, his crimson robes fluttering like bloodied silk. Cassius Varro, the masked leader called, voice smooth and cold. "By order of the Silent Emperor, you are hereby bound to silence." Aelia didn't wait for the next word. She thrust her hand forward, and a burst of red light flared from her palm, sending a wave of flame along the ground. The street exploded in smoke and sparks. "Run!" she shouted. Cassius ran. Through the back alleys. Over shattered steps. Down into a wine cellar that hadn't seen sunlight in years. Behind him, he heard the clash of steel, the hiss of magic, the inhuman shriek of a death cry. He reached the far wall, and found himself at a dead end. "No, no!" Aelia dropped beside him, blood on her cheek, the torch in her hand sputtering. "Hold your breath." "Why?" She slammed her hand against the wall, and the stone shimmered then collapsed like smoke. They fell through. They landed hard, sliding down a slope of loose dust and crumbled bones. Cassius coughed, pulling himself upright. They were in a crypt. Not one built by Romans, but older. Narrow halls. No inscriptions. No marble statues. Only masks? Dozens of them. Hung on the walls. Carved from wood, stone, gold. Some smiling. Some screaming. "What is this place?" Aelia lit a second torch. The flame illuminated a single inscription over a black doorway. "Here sleep the keepers of memory. Disturb not the bound." Cassius stared at the rows of masks. "This is one of the Severian vaults," Aelia whispered. "They buried their dead with their thoughts. Not in their minds, but in their masks." "You mean, these contain memories?" "Yes. And if the Legion follows us here, they will try to burn everyone." Cassius stepped closer to one of the masks, a weeping woman carved in obsidian. As his fingers brushed the edge, he felt a sudden pulse. A voice spoke, not aloud, but inside his head. "He walks again. The gate shifts. The soul thief dreams." He staggered back. "It's alive." "They all are," Aelia said. "But they will not help us, unless we are in their memory." Suddenly Aelia gasped, her eyes wide. "They found us." Cassius turned. From the far tunnel, red light bloomed, torches. Footsteps. The Red Legion was coming. "How many?" "Too many." Cassius looked around, breathing fast. What do we do? Aelia turned to him, eyes burning. We awaken the vault. That doesn't sound safe. It isn't. She stabbed her dagger into the stone floor, and the masks began to scream. Not with voices. With visions. The air erupted in a storm of memories, half-seen wars, burning cities, lovers torn apart, spells written in languages older than breath. The Legion entered, and staggered, disoriented, screaming as memories not their own overwhelmed them. Cassius felt the pressure slam into his mind, like the weight of 100 lives screaming to be remembered. He fell to one knee, clutching his skull. Aelia gripped his arm. Focus! Remember yourself. That's how the vault spares you. He closed his eyes. Focused on the scent of old parchment. The heat of the scroll. His own name. Cassius. I am Cassius. I remember. When he opened his eyes, the chamber was still. The Legion was gone, driven mad or buried beneath the fallen ceiling. The masks had gone silent. Aelia staggered to the wall, breathing hard. The vault is sealed again. So we're trapped? She shook her head. There's another exit. But we must move now. Why? Cassius asked. She looked back at him. Because the vault gave you something. What? A vision. Cassius frowned. What vision? She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small stone token, shaped like the thorn-wrapped eye. You are marked, she said. And now the next seal is calling you. Chapter 7, Aelia's Pact. The escape tunnel spiraled upward through stone that no longer felt Roman. The air was colder here, older, like the breath of a time forgotten. Every step echoed as if the earth were listening. Cassius could hear water dripping in the distance, and with it, a soft chanting, barely audible, not quite words. He didn't ask if Aelia heard it too. She walked ahead in silence, her torch casting long shadows that danced across the narrow walls. After what felt like hours, the passage opened into a ruined garden. Once, it must have belonged to a noble house: high walls, faded mosaics, twisted grapevines curling around broken statues. Now, it was just a pocket of stillness above the dead. They paused there, catching their breath beneath the ash-colored sky. Aelia leaned against a shattered column, brushing a smear of blood from her cheek. Cassius finally asked, "What happened down there? What did the vault show me?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she removed her gloves, slowly, deliberately, and turned her palms to face him. Cassius stepped closer, and froze. Her skin was etched with symbols, not tattoos but burn marks. Deep, layered, like inscriptions carved into stone. "Those are Severan runes," he said softly. "Yes. You said you weren't part of them." Aelia looked at him then, truly looked, and Cassius saw something raw in her expression. "I wasn't." Not at first. She turned away, facing the dying sky. "When I was 10, my village was destroyed. Not by war or famine, but by memory. A spell cast long ago, buried beneath the soil. Someone dug too deep. Uncovered something that had been meant to sleep forever. Within days, no one remembered their names, their families, their gods. I alone survived." Cassius sat on the low edge of a dried-out fountain, listening. "I was taken to the circle. The Severan order raised me. Taught me their language, their fire, their purpose. And when I turned 16, she held up one hand, showing a sigil carved deep into her wrist. They branded me as a living seal. What does that mean? It means my life is tied to one of the 7 tombs. As long as I live, the seal holds. But if I die, or break my vows, it will weaken. And if all 7 fall..." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Cassius looked down at his hands. "So the prophecy, the red moon, it's real. More than real, she said. It's remembered. And that makes it dangerous. A pause. And you? What did you see in the vault? Cassius hesitated. A figure in chains, he said. Masked? But I knew it was him. The one they sealed. The one the Emperor feared. He looked at her. And then I saw something worse. I saw Rome burning. Not once. Over and over. Aelia nodded slowly. That is the gate's promise. The gate? Cassius asked. The place beyond the seals. A realm where time breaks, where memory loops, where magic feeds on what the world has forgotten. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. And the man beneath the tombs, he is not just a sorcerer. He is the one who opened the gate the first time. So the Emperor didn't imprison him to stop him from using magic, Cassius said. He imprisoned him to stop him from bringing something worse into our world. Yes, Aelia whispered. But it was already too late. She removed a small object from her cloak, a pendant, shaped like a crescent moon wrapped in iron thorns. This belonged to the first seal-bearer, she said. He gave his life to create the original lock. The crystal heart we saw? That was his soul. Burned. Bound. Alive. She handed it to Cassius. Why are you giving this to me? Because you're marked now. You survived the vault. That means your blood carries something mine doesn't, access. The tombs will respond to you now. Why me? She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly. Because the gate doesn't choose heroes. It chooses witnesses. The wind shifted. Cassius turned his head. Somewhere below the ruins, a low hum echoed. Like breath through stone. Aelia turned toward the western wall, where a faint mark had begun to glow across the broken marble, an eye of thorns, etched in faded gold. The second seal has stirred, she said. How do we reach it? She looked at him, then down at the map she conjured from memory, tracing her finger through flame and air. We go east. To the mountains. What's there? Aelia's voice dropped to a whisper. The tomb of the thrice-damned. Chapter 8, Blood and Memory. The road east took them through the Sabine hills, where olive trees withered in the dry wind and shepherds watched travelers with wary, ancient eyes. Cassius and Aelia rode in silence. 2 stolen horses, stolen cloaks, and a sky that seemed to darken even as the sun rose. The terrain grew rougher with each passing mile. Fewer Roman milestones marked the path. Civilization faded, leaving behind only old gods and the scent of thunder. You said the tomb was in the mountains, Cassius said as their horses crested a slope. Beneath them, Aelia replied. Buried after the Gate Wars. Cassius frowned. I've read about those. Nothing in the archives mentioned magic. Aelia offered a bitter smile. Because history is written by those who fear remembering. That night, they camped at the edge of an abandoned villa half swallowed by ivy. A stone well stood at its center, cracked and dry. Moonlight filtered through the broken columns like blades of pale glass. Cassius couldn't sleep. The crystal heart they'd seen in the first tomb haunted his thoughts. He sat by the dying fire, tracing the rim of the Severan pendant Aelia had given him. How long has it been since someone opened one of the tombs? He asked. Aelia stirred from her half-sleep. 800 years. Maybe more. Not since the last seal-bearer died in Alexandria. And what happened? She didn't answer right away. Then, the Nile rose for 40 days. A third of the city drowned. The rest forgot why they screamed. Cassius stared into the flames. A question gnawed at him, one he hadn't dared ask until now. What if the gate isn't just bound by the seals? He said softly. What if it's bound by blood? Aelia looked at him. He continued. The scroll reacted to me. The vault let me in. The crystal seal pulsed when I touched it. You said I wasn't part of the circle, but what if my family was? He removed a ring from his finger, one he'd worn since childhood. A simple iron band with an inscription on the inner edge. Aelia leaned in, eyes narrowing. That's not Latin. It's older. My mother said it came from my father's side. A burial ring passed down. Can you read it? Cassius nodded. He translated it long ago. I remember the silence between gods. Aelia's face went still. That phrase, it's one of the 9 echoes. Sévère in doctrine. Only those born into the old blood would know it. Cassius felt cold. So what does that make me? It makes you part of the pattern, Aelia said. The gate remembers its children. Later, while Aelia slept beneath her cloak, Cassius wandered toward the old well. The night was unnaturally quiet. He peered over the edge. And the well spoke. Not aloud, but within his mind. Cassius Varro, born of silence, carved in memory, you are the 13th witness. He staggered back. No, he whispered. No, that name was never mine. A shadow rose from the well, smoke-like and coiling, forming a vague shape, a man in robes, his face hidden behind a thorn-wrapped mask. You carry the blood of the one who opened the gate. You were never meant to forget. You were only meant to awaken. Cassius turned to run, but the vision held him still. Why me? The masked figure tilted its head. Because you were born during the last eclipse. Because your name was carved on the scroll before your mother ever drew breath. Because memory is not learned. It is returned. Then the shadow reached toward him. Come. Let me show you who you were. Cassius's vision exploded. He saw flames consuming an ancient city not marked on any map. A tower of bone. A woman with eyes like silver moons kneeling beside a pool of black water. A child cradled in her arms, marked with a seal on his shoulder. And a voice, whispering from the fire. You are the key. But the lock no longer remembers you. He woke to Aelia shaking him. You wandered off, she said. You were muttering names. What names? Your own, she said quietly. But not the one I know. He looked down at his hand. The ring was gone. In its place was a burned sigil, faint, but glowing. A spiral within a circle, with 13 dots surrounding it. It's the mark of a witness, Aelia whispered. You've seen through time. What does it mean? She touched his shoulder gently. It means the gate has started to remember you. In the distance, thunder echoed, not from the sky, but from beneath the earth. The mountains loomed ahead like sleeping beasts. And somewhere in their roots, the tomb of the thrice-damned waited. Chapter 9: The Unseen War. The mountains welcomed no one. Cassius and Aelia stood at the base of the Apennines, staring up at jagged cliffs scarred by landslides and storms, their peaks lost in cold mist. The road had ended 2 days ago. What remained was wilderness, thick with briars, bone-white trees, and the scent of iron in the air. Are you sure it's here? Cassius asked, pulling his cloak tighter. Not here, Aelia said. Beneath. They climbed in silence, passing markers that no Roman had placed, stone obelisks etched with runes too ancient to belong to the Empire. Some had been cracked in half. Others bled dark sap from within. We're being watched, Aelia whispered as they crossed a narrow pass. By what? Not what. When? Cassius stopped. What does that even mean? Aelia turned to him, her eyes unusually sharp. The battlefield ahead wasn't won or lost in time. It's still happening. The war never ended. It just became unseen. They reached a plateau just before dusk, a wind-swept clearing marked by scorched earth and stone relics jutting from the soil like broken teeth. The ground was cracked and glassy, as if burned by something far hotter than fire. This is the place, Aelia said. The site of the last Severan resistance. Cassius looked around. There were no bodies. No weapons. Just silence. There's nothing here. Look again, she murmured. She reached into her satchel, pulled out a small vial of black sand, and scattered it across the ground. The air shimmered. And then they saw it. The memories of war awoke. Figures appeared, ghost-like and transparent, sorcerers in flaming armor clashing with warriors cloaked in red. Spells lit the air like lightning. Screams echoed across the valley. Above it all, a shape hung in the sky like a rift, a spiraling gate, pulsing with color and silence. Cassius fell to one knee as the vision consumed him. He saw a woman wielding a staff of bone and fire, Aelia's eyes in another life. He saw a man impaled on a blade made of ink. He saw himself. Standing at the center of it all, wearing robes marked with the thorn eye, chanting words in a language he didn't yet know. I was here, he whispered. In another life. We all were, Aelia said, kneeling beside him. Every seal-bearer was reborn through memory. The vision faded, but the weight of it remained. Cassius rose, his hands trembling. So we're not just stopping the gate from opening again. We're repeating it. Aelia nodded. Unless we break the pattern. How? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned toward the far edge of the clearing, where a strange structure stood, half buried in the earth. Come. There's something you need to see. The structure was a dome of stone and glass, cracked and vine-covered. At its center stood a monolith, a block of obsidian inscribed with names. Aelia traced one with her finger. The witnesses. Cassius stepped closer. There were 12 names. The 13th line was blank. That's my name, isn't it? He said quietly. Yes. You are the last. He touched the stone, and immediately his vision swirled. He stood in a garden of statues, each one a version of himself. Young. Old. Wounded. Crowned. Broken. In each, the same eyes. The same soul. From behind the statues, a voice spoke. You are not new. You are only late. He turned. A man stepped forward, tall, robed, wearing a mask of polished obsidian. His voice was calm. Deep. I am Talmarin. The 11th witness. You're dead. No one dies in memory. Only fades. Cassius stared at him. Why did you fail? Talmarin smiled. Because I hesitated. I loved the world too much. And what about me? You will burn, Cassius. But perhaps, you will burn with purpose. Then the vision collapsed. Cassius fell backward, gasping. Aelia caught him before he hit the ground. What did you see? The 11th. He warned me. Then we're out of time. A wind rose across the plateau, sharp, cold, carrying with it the distant sound of hooves. Aelia's eyes widened. We're not alone. From the north, a black chariot approached, drawn by horses of twisted bone and leather. A figure stood atop it, tall, draped in crimson and bone-stitched cloth, a crown of black iron circling his brow. That's not the Legion, Cassius whispered. Aelia's face darkened. No. That's Vale Acros. The Severan who broke the pact. I thought they were extinct. He isn't. He feeds on broken seals. The wind howled louder. Run? Cassius asked. Not yet, Aelia said. We'll draw him in. Then we burn his memory from the world. Cassius looked at her. You can do that? No, she said grimly. But you can. And as the sun disappeared behind the peaks, the ground trembled with the return of a sorcerer long thought buried. The unseen war had begun again.
Every story has an ending. But some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.